Ah, Miami. Beaches, beauty, bronze. Okay, so the condos may not be worth $1 million anymore, but the view sure is. Zip across the causeway that connect the mainland to Miami Beach, and it's as if you're leaving your troubles behind. Unless you happen to be cruising along the Julia Tuttle Causeway, and you slow down enough to look at the side of the road. What are those tents doing along the water's edge? Hello? Hello? There is a distinctly permanent feeling to this scruffy encampment, and it's clear many of its residents don't want anything to do with inquisitive reporters. What'd you do that you ended up here? Same thing everybody else did. Okay, thanks. What they did has made them pariahs. They are sex offenders, a makeshift colony of 71 outcasts living here under the bridge because the laws say if they go almost anywhere else, they will be sent right back to jail. So you got this $1 million view.
It's not $1 million view to me.
What is it?
It's a shame on Miami to me.
One of the few men here willing to talk is Homer Barkley, a seemingly harmless guy, until you learn he was sent to prison for 10 years for attempted sexual assault on a 10-year-old girl.
What's going on, my people? This is Blanche Eden, your host for Black Trending News. This is episode 28. Today we're going to be talking about black men and their sex offender crimes, black men on sex offender registries, and some things that sex offenders have to experience after they're released from prison and they serve their time. Black men specifically are disproportionately represented on sex offender registries, even though it's unlikely that they commit sexual assault at higher rates than other ethnic or racial groups. Nearly 1 of every 100 black men is on a sex offender registry, a rate double that of white men. We're going to get into why they're disproportionate on it. Of course, many people have their theories. A lot of people have common sense about it, like, right, because they're black. But it goes a little bit deeper than that. Let's go into a story, a terrible story. I mean, one of the worst stories I've ever heard personally. This story is from July 29, 2019. Might have happened before that, but that's what this report was from Pensacola News Journal. So there was a black sheriff office deputy, pretty big position. He's been accused. He was arrested for, quote, urinating in the mouth of a young girl multiple times over the span of nearly 2 years. They also think that there's other young children involved as well. Quote, urinating. I don't think a child knows what ejaculation means. So based on what the child had said in the report, I think that's what he was doing, but I could be wrong. So Jerome Zaid, he's 33 years old. Some reports that he's 32, but this report says that he's 33. He was arrested on a Friday. He is an Escambia County Sheriff's Office deputy. That is really shameful. Really shameful. Somebody of that position and authority is doing nasty shit like this. Like, it's just unbelievable. You really can't judge anybody based on what they do. You really can't. And this is just another proof that you cannot look at what somebody's job is, somebody's ranking in society, and say they could never do something like this. This is outrageous. A warrant for his arrest was released. Details several instances where Zaid allegedly urinated into the mouth of a girl, now age 5, from October 2017 through July 2019. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement is investigating the case, and the agency said in a news release that agents believe Zaid victimized at least 2 children under the age of 6, both of whom he had frequent contact with. Okay, we all know that most kids who are sexually offended are offended by people who they know in their social circle. it's just really sad. The investigation is ongoing and agents believe there may be additional victims. The release states, if you have any information about Zaid, they're asking that you call Pensacola Regional Operations Center at 850-595-2100. Some other details here. According to Zaid's arrest report, the 5-year-old girl underwent a forensic interview at the Gulf Coast Kids House on July 22nd. During her interview, she said when she was left alone with Zaid, he would place his private part into her mouth and urinate, the report stated. She told investigators that Zaid would then instruct her to brush her teeth. The report stated the girl recounted the incidents typically occurred in the bathroom, except for one time when she had been wearing a yellow tutu butterfly costume, the report stated. Investigators later obtained a statement from a person who verified the girl had dressed as a butterfly for Halloween when she was 3 years old and had been left alone with Zaid not long after Halloween that year. The girl told investigators the last time an incident had occurred was when she had been left alone with Zaid earlier that month on July 17th. Again, investigators obtained a statement from an unnamed person who verified that the child had been under Zaid's supervision at that time. Just really, really sad. I mean, you really got to be careful who you leave your kids with. More quotes from the young girl here, who is now 5. On July 25th, a medical examiner was completed on the victim. And another thing she said, while their officials asked the victim if Zaid's front part touched her mouth, the victim stated, yes, it goes inside my mouth. On July 26th, Major Andrew Hobbs said the sheriff's office is now in the process of terminating Zaid. Okay. She also said that during one specific incident, he told her to go behind the closet and open it. According to the report, the child went on to say she spit the pee out and again brushed her teeth because Zaid instructed her to do that. This is really disgusting. I am done reading this story, but it does lead me into the seriousness of sex offending and what they have to go to. In no way am I defending these people that do this at all, no whatsoever. But I thought it would be interesting to talk about the different degrees of sex offending, because there's very minor sex offending and there's like really major sex offending, like the story I just read. That is a major severe version of sex offending. But there is sex offenses that are very minor. Very minor. For example, in 1999, Kevin, a black 19-year-old, was partying at the East Texas home of a friend who had a 12-year-old sister. Kevin remembered that he watched TV with his friend's sister and admitted that at one point he touched her breast. When she told her mother about the incident, Kevin was charged with felony indecency with a child. Wow. The district attorney's office offered Kevin deferred adjudication, meaning that he would have no criminal record if he successfully completed 10 years of probation, and he took the deal. Wow. That's not... I'm going to do a podcast after this about probation. I have something up my sleeve about that we're going to get into on my next podcast. So definitely look out for that, because that's a really big business, probation. On top of prisoners actually in prison, probation is another money pot for a lot of people. So I'm going to get into that a little bit. I have a story on that. But back to Kevin here. Kevin didn't realize he would be placed on Texas's sex offender registry. Like other states, it is public in accordance with the federal 2006 Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act, named for 6-year-old Walsh, who was kidnapped and found murdered in 1981. Kevin didn't know that the registry required that his name, photo, and address be published, nor did he know that he would be put on the registry for life. Though he completed his probation 8 years ago and has no other arrests on his record, he remains on the registry nearly 20 years later. Now, many of us would say that is absolutely ridiculous. He has no other crimes. He was 19. He was with a 12-year-old girl. Now, most of us can say when we were 12, we might have kissed a boy or maybe engaged in some type of, appropriate at that age. I mean, I'm not defending, but I'm just saying he touched her breast and the mom said something, and now this is what he's doing for the rest of his life. I think that's a little disproportionate if you ask me. If that's all he's ever done, I think this is extreme that over 20 years he's considered a sex offender. Just to go deeper into this, Kevin also didn't realize that he would be subjected to draconian laws about where sex offenders can live or work, such as the one in the city he lived in that bans sex offenders from living less than 1,000 feet from any place where children congregate, including schools, daycare centers, playgrounds, youth centers, public swimming pools, and video arcades. We all know those are everywhere, right? So where do these sex offenders live?
He first came here in January 2008. That's when he was released on probation.
When I got to the probation officer also confirmed me that I had to come and live up under the Judith Tuttle Causeway. They also told me that I had to go to the driver's license place and put it on my driver's license.
Is it on your driver's license?
Yes, sir.
Do you have it? Can you show me? And what does it say there?
Judith Tuttle Causeway.
Julia Tuttle Causeway. That's your home address.
My home address is in Liberty City.
Can you not live in Liberty City?
I can't live in Liberty City based on the ordinance.
The ordinance. You quickly learn that it's all about the ordinance and about a web of overlapping laws.
This is my life right here. This is my life. As you see, it's so hot. I have to lay here. It's so hot in the tent.
What's it like with the noise?
It's like bumblebees in your head.
What your television can't convey is the stench, a suffocating cocktail of sewage, urine, and trash. There is no sanitation here, no running water. Like most of the men here, Homer has to wear a tracking device.
They tell me that I have to be here from 6 o'clock p.m. to 7 o'clock a.m. in the morning.
Do you feel like you're being punished a second time?
Of course I do. I done went to prison and did all that time while I'm still here. While I'm still being punished. All I want is my life back. I deserve a second chance at life.
Many other states and localities have similar laws. In Georgia, a law that is its General Assembly enacted in 2006 made it illegal and punishable by 10 to 30 years in prison for people on the sex offender registry to live or work within 1,000 feet of a school or other place where children gather. The law makes it virtually impossible for registrants to live anywhere in Georgia. In Miami Beach, an ordinance was passed in 2005 banning people on sex offender registries from living within 2,500 feet of a school, legislation that led in part to a massive homeless encampment near Miami International Airport. But the requirements of sex offender registries have not made communities safer. You have to think about that, okay? People like registries. They like to be able to see if there's a sex offender living, where they're living. They want their children to be safe. They want to make sure they're going into a school, a daycare, or they're just living in a place that doesn't have people who can potentially harm their child. I get it, right? But it's not making the communities any safer. So what is it for? What is it for if it's not making the communities any safer? According to a 2014 study published in the Journal of Interpersonal Violence, sex offender recidivism during the first 5 years after release from prison ranges from less than 3% for the lowest risk offenders to 22% for those at highest risk. In contrast, according to Department of Justice data, 33% of violent offenders commit another violent offense within 5 years, and 51% of drug offenders break another drug law. Meanwhile, sex offender researchers have found that the longer a sex offender goes without reoffending, the less likely the person is to do so. In 2018 study in psychology, public policy, and law has found that the chance of a sex offender committing a new sex crime after 15 years is 2%. That's roughly the same rate as for people who are convicted of other crimes, who then go out and commit a sex crime. And there's no evidence that sex offenses and recidivism are reduced by registries. Instead, they appear to be a product of moral panic and the trend to increase criminalization, surveillance, and shaming. I agree with this to an extent. Yes, it's nice to know that, there's no sex offenders living around you, but it's also, there's just got to be better laws, I feel like. There's just got to be something to give. There's a lot of homeless people as a result of this in every single state. I mean, you see a lot of men. I go to the library. I go to my local library, and I see a lot of homeless men in there, and I'm wondering, are they sex offenders? And this is a library where there are children. So what's the point, right? We have a sex offender that has nowhere to live. Now he's wandering around, right? But if he doesn't live anywhere, how do you know there's not a sexual offender in your neighborhood? You really don't know, because he's homeless, so he can go anywhere. He's anywhere now. So he's anywhere where you are. If he's in a library, right, during the day because he has nowhere to go because the shelters are closed, now he's around your kids. So it really doesn't make it any safer, if you ask me. And I do believe that it is, an advance at criminalization, surveillance, and shaming. No way, again, am I defending sex offenders. I just think that the law needs to be better. It just needs to be better, period. Especially for a person like Kevin, who touched a 12-year-old's breast at the age of 19 and is still on a sex offender registry after 20 some odd years. That's all he did. He has no other criminal background. He's not a violent. It wasn't rape. There was nothing forced. It was nothing that bad. Black people like Kevin are disproportionately represented on the registry. A 2004 Iowa law review study of registries in 17 states found that Black people are more than 1.9 times more likely to be on a registries than white people. In 2010, University of Washington Tacoma criminologist Alyssa Ackerman and her colleagues examined records for over 445,000 people on registries in 49 states, Washington, D.C., and Guam. They found that Black people were more than twice as likely than whites to be on sex offender registries. Today, about 900,000 people are on public sex offender registries, with about 1 of every 100 Black men on a registry, a rate double that of white men. Despite the disparate racial impacts of the registry and that they are inflictive in increasing public safety, people like registries. They like knowing they can hop on their phone and find an offender's address.
Meet Ron Book, a man who's not sure about second chances. The multimillionaire Florida lobbyist is the architect of Florida's harsh sexual predator laws. For Book, it is a personal crusade. 8 years ago, he learned that the nanny he and his wife had hired to care for their children was physically and sexually abusing their daughter. The nanny went to jail, and Book went to work pushing Florida's politicians to make pariahs of all sexual offenders. He succeeded.
There is a perception that the 2,500-foot law is so onerous in this community that it leaves nowhere realistic for these men to live. Is that a fair perception?
I think it's fair to have that discussion and that debate. Yes, it's difficult. Nobody said that someone exiting the prison system after committing a sexually deviant act on a child has a right to dictate where they live.
It's my sense that the fundamental problem here is that nobody wants to defend sex offenders. And I think most people watching this will say, so be it. What they did was horrible.
I have a daughter that was 12 years old when she was first molested and raped. I have a different perspective than many people. I sleep very comfortably at night knowing that we have made our community safer.
County Commissioner Pepe Diaz sleeps well at night, too, knowing that he helped his county pass some of the toughest sexual offender laws in the country.
And no time am I going to apologize for the law that I helped create along with my colleagues. That law has saved, to me, in my opinion, the innocence of a lot of children.
Diaz will tell you he is not proud of the camp on the causeway.
That is not a way to live for anybody. And also, in the midst of one of our bridges that goes to one of our main tourist areas in Miami Beach.
But he has no interest in changing the law.
In July, there was a study published by Jessica Warner at Miami University Regionals in Ohio. And it suggested that black men are more than twice as likely as whites to be overclassified on sex offender registries. Registries generally classify offenders as low, moderate, and high risk. States assign varying minimum times that a person in each classification must stay registered, from 15 years to life. Tickner and Warner's study also found that statistically, blacks must re-register more frequently than whites and spend more time on the registry. Black men are also twice as likely as whites to be arrested for sex offenses and 3 times more likely to be accused of forcible rape. But it's unlikely that they commit sexual assault at higher rates than other ethnic or racial groups. So most people would say this is racism. This is a form of racism of keeping black men out of work, out of your neighborhood, out of society. This is just another route at doing that, and it's successful, as you can see. The over-representation of black men in sexual assault cases may be due in part to the fact that they are disproportionately wrongfully accused. According to the University of California at Irvine's National Registry of Exonerations, 59% of sexual assault exonerees are black, which is 4.5 times their proportion in the general population. Black sexuality and racism have long been intertwined in a criminal justice system, such as in the case of Emmett Till and the Scottsboro Boys. Indeed, many people on the registry were arrested and convicted decades later, when racism in charging and jury selection were much more pervasive in the criminal justice system. One of them is a black man in Alabama convicted of rape in 1955. He is still on the registry at age 81 for an offense he committed at 19. Back to Kevin here. So Kevin is in Texas, right? His listing on the state registry has resulted in termination from a job, and the sheriff's department once ordered him out of a home he rented. His employment is largely confined to janitorial work. Kevin lives in a relative's house in the countryside. It's the only place he's found that complies with his community's residence restrictions for people like him. This is a boy that has no record whatsoever, but for touching a 12-year-old's breast at 19 years old. There's no other details. It doesn't say that it was rape. It doesn't say that it was violent. It just said he touched her breast. So maybe they were making out. Who knows? Like, who knows what happened, right? 12, 19. Yes, it's a big age gap, but I can see it. I can easily see a mature 12-year-old with a 19-year-old boy. I can see it. Most of us can say that we've seen that. Is it right? No, I think mom would be very unhappy with that. If I had a 12-year-old girl, she was a 19-year-old boy, I'd be unhappy with that. I think most parents would be very unhappy with that. But it's not something that's so off the wall, so crazy, so, awful that this guy has to suffer like this. I'm just sorry. I think these laws need to be updated. I really think they need to be updated. Another crazy story, in Florida, again. There's another man who was a sex offender. Since he's been released from prison almost 5 years ago, he's never been able, they're calling him John because they have to disclose these people's identities because they're afraid that they get killed or hurt or some other craziness. So John has never had a place he can call home. He suffers from Parkinson's disease. He spends nights outside in remote areas of Miami-Dade County, sleeping outside on a mat or in the front seat of his son's truck. John was convicted in 1994 of a sex offense involving a minor. His homelessness is a direct result of the Lauren Book Child Safety Ordinance enacted in Miami-Dade County in 2010, which bans individuals convicted of certain sex crimes, including those involving minors, from living within 2,500 feet of a school. Violating this ordinance can result in a $1,000 fine, jail for up to 364 days, or both. So if he lives in the wrong place, works in the wrong place, he can go back to jail for that. John is one of 7 homeless people who sued Miami-Dade County in a case brought jointly in 2014 by the American Civil Liberties Union.
Do you really think that there are sufficient places where these men can live legally in the county?
Absolutely.
That is not what the American Civil Liberties Union found. They have just released a study of available affordable housing for sex offenders in Miami-Dade County. In the entire county, just 15 units were available to sex offenders at a rent of less than $1,000 a month. And at rents under $750 a month, not a single unit qualified. So who was in charge of helping the sex offenders find a proper home? Meet Ron Book, the multimillionaire lobbyist who is head of Miami-Dade's Homeless Trust. No, don't adjust your TV sets. Yes, this is the same Ron Book who pushed for the laws that push predators under the bridge. And he's also the man in charge of finding them a proper home.
Do you know how many sites we've chased over the last weeks? And I'm still sort of optimistic that if we keep chasing sites, we're going to find 3 or 4.
Ron Book knows some people think his 2 roles are irreconcilable.
I wear these 2 hats. In this particular case, they have run into one another. I don't want to use the word colliding, but they've run into one another.
The American Civil Liberties Union has filed a motion in circuit court asking that the local ordinances be invalidated and just the state 1,000-foot law be allowed to stand. Ron Book disagrees.
Look, I've not been bashful about my feelings about people who commit offenses against children. I have referred to them as monsters. Everybody under the bridge knows that.
I am not a monster. I'm a human being. I got family like you got family. I got family like they got family. I don't deserve this, man. If you felt like these guys did something so gross, then you should have sentenced them to life. You don't put them out and just cast them out and put them on a little land surrounded by the ocean. This is not right.
For Nightline, I'm Jeffrey Kaufman on the Julia Tuttle Causeway in Miami.
The court concludes that the ordinance's residency restriction is rationally connected to the non-punitive purpose of protecting children from sex offenders. The plaintiffs are appealing. Quote, all of our plaintiffs, if not for the restriction, would have somewhere to go, Brandon Bunsky, Deputy Director for Smart Justice Litigation at the ACLU, said in an interview with the Crime Report. They're forced to be homeless. According to the plaintiffs, the ordinance excludes them from almost 99% of affordable and available rental units in Miami-Dade County. Only approximately 388 such units in Miami-Dade County are not within 2,500 feet of a school, according to plaintiffs. Generally, the areas outside the buffer zone are in industrial zones or agricultural areas, according to the suit. This ordinance pushes people to the most remote parts of the country. As a result of the residency restriction, people convicted of sex crimes have formed homeless encampments along railroad tracks and industrial areas where some probation officers have reportedly directed their clients, including John, the complaint said. The residency restriction even makes the county's homeless shelters off limits. This is a really tough thing because they did commit really heinous crimes. You know, sex offending is a very serious crime, and children are very innocent and don't deserve that type of abuse. But this law is just crazy. The fact that they have to form encampments, you know, there's places in Georgia like that, in Atlanta. There's places, everybody has seen them, you know, and how is that any better for society? There has to be another way that they cater to these people after they get out of prison and serve their time, especially when statistics show that they're not likely to do it again. It's really tough. It's a really sensitive topic. You leave your comments below. Tell me what you think. Do you have any experiences, any stories you want to share? Go ahead and drop it at the bottom.